this year. No matter what happens this weekend, he will go to Japan in 2 weeks' time, leading Aaron Canet and Diego Moreira. See if he can continue that recent trend of just gradually increasing the championship lead as he has done. This is not.
Yeah, he's been keeping the likes of Canet and Moreira very much at arm's length. Still an awful long way to go in this season for Gonzalez to see this one over the line. As we get underway with this free practice 2 section of the field, of course, in Moto2 this weekend, with a couple of wild cards added to the normal cast of characters. Both of them had mixed days yesterday, it's fair to say. We have Alberto Ferrandez on a 9th Boscoscuro on track this weekend. Essentially, he's a teammate to Vietti and Lopez at the Speed RS team. Ferrandez on the 93 did have a crash yesterday afternoon in practice, which is part of the reason why he's down in 28th place. And his fellow wildcard and rival from the European Moto2 Championship, Alberto Sorel, well, he also went down his crash in free practice 1 yesterday morning. He was 29th at the end of running yesterday, so we'll see both of those in qualifying 1 later on. You do see a couple of names on your time screen that you're obviously familiar with.
Just dipping into some of the times that we saw yesterday in practice to give you a bit of an overview of how the grid looks to be set at this early stage of the weekend in terms of rhythm. I was looking at the first run or runs in practice, which gave a bit of an indication. Some riders were doing longer runs around 9-10 laps. Some were doing 2 separate runs. But looking at those that were able to lap in those longer runs in the 1 minute 34s or lower the 1 minute 35.5, I think that was an indication of just who had the very quickest pace. And Jake Dixon was able to do 2 laps in that kind of bracket. Manu Gonzalez, Aaron Canet were able to do 3. Senna Aegis was able to do 4, but standing well along off the rest was Celestino Vietti, who was able to do 8. And in particular, I think he had a 4-lap run where he was doing 1 minute 35.1s. And pretty advanced stage of one of his runs, which indicated to me that he was very, very well set up for Sunday, even if it was just a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, Manu Gonzalez, by contrast, his runs were generally averaging around a 1:35.4, 35.5. Dixon was doing 35.4s, 35.5s, although we did see him get down to a 35.0 at one point in his run. Moreira, as I sort of alluded to moments ago, he was more in the high 35s, but I don't think we should necessarily be concerned from his point of view by that. That is generally the way Diogo Moreira does things. He then makes that step forward in the race. Senna Aegis was also doing mid to low 35s, doing 35.2s, 35.4s at the end of his run. And I think that's one key thing, pattern that was sort of translated across every rider's long run yesterday, is that they were doing similar sort of lap times at the end of the run as they were at the beginning. We're not going to see the same kind of drop-off in performance that we saw a week ago in Barcelona, which was a much more punishing circuit on tyres, much more abrasive, much lower grip levels. The riders, particularly MotoGP, were absolutely waxing lyrical yesterday about how grippy this Misano World Circuit Marco Simoncelli is. Pirelli have, as a result of that, gone more aggressive on the tyre options with the return of the super soft rear tyre, but certainly from what we're seeing and from the lack of drop-off on performance, we'd expect most to go for that super soft rear tyre in the Grand Prix tomorrow.
Yeah, I think they most certainly will. I think it was Manu Gonzalez was saying yesterday that he just expects to see no drop-off in times, no drop-off in performance, so he reckons that they can be running close to fastest rhythm and the fastest pace right towards the end of race distance on Sunday. So it'll be interesting to see. Sometimes that's not always the best for racing, when riders can just go absolutely hell for leather and flat out all race long, but that's the case in the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix last year in Moto2. We had an absolute corker that went right the way down, not even to the final corner, to the run out of the final corner. It was decided there and then.
Those are the very final meters of the Grand Prix. Agonizing one to Aaron Canet or Tony Arbolino, who we saw a moment ago being passed by Senna Aegis into turn 2, a move that did catch Arbolino slightly by surprise. Important session for Tony this morning, having lost some track time yesterday afternoon in practice. As mentioned before the session got underway, he had a fuel pump problem at the start of the practice session, which saw him pull over on the side of the racetrack moments after leaving the pit lane at the green light, given that he was wanting to do the bulk of his running on a single tyre at the end of the session. That was why we didn't see him back on the track for quite some time until the closing stages, as we saw the bulk of the riders yesterday putting in around about the 15 to 20 lap mark. Marino yesterday only got the 7 laps in, 4 time laps. That was nowhere near enough for him to make his way into Q2.
So potentially another tough weekend ahead for Tiger Tony. I've seen the best of him a great deal this year, it has to be said. Just saw Huertas on our screens there. We were talking yesterday about how Huertas is maybe starting to show signs of him adapting to this Moto2 class and understanding exactly what is needed. As we see Jake Dixon jump up the order into 8th, that is Marino Rossi and Patrick Kramer, team managers and coordinators, the Mark VDS squad. Good day overall, wasn't it, for Dixon, who was inside the top 4 in both of yesterday's sessions. I think he was 2nd in FP1, 4th in practice, and all around the track that hasn't always been a great place for Jake in years gone by. He was just saying that the feeling that he had rolling out of the box from yesterday morning was pretty much the same one that he had in Barcelona, which carried him to 2nd place, his 4th podium of the year, and he was just feeling pretty comfortable, able to now brake more or less how he wants to. And obviously there's a whole host of heavy brakings on this Misano road circuit. Just want to certainly keep an eye on for the podium at least. Not completely out of the championship picture just yet. 5th overall, 65 points back of Manny Gonzalez.
In this weekend, then he's still very much in the conversation, isn't he? Still another 6 Grand Prix to go after this one. Head to the Far East. Japanese Grand Prix coming up in a couple of weeks' time, where, remember, Jake Dixon was on pole position last year before the mixed weather conditions took over. So he's had some success. The likes of Mandalika, Phillip Island, of course, favourite of so many in the Grand Prix calendar. It's Hang Circuit in Malaysia, where perhaps his most recent memories weren't particularly positive, as he lost a podium in the last stages of the Grand Prix a year ago. Dixon at the moment in 10th place in this session, just ahead of his teammate Philip Salac, who understandably was feeling rather sore and rather stiff yesterday after the crash last time we saw him in Barcelona. But despite all of that, it's a notable achievement given how he was feeling physically yesterday for Salac to book his automatic place in Q2.
Absolutely, it was a decent performance from Philip. Described it as probably the worst feeling that he had had on any Friday throughout this 2025 season. Of course, Aaron Canet on there at turn 18. Alonso decided to do his own running yesterday, but he's rather wisely chosen a certain Italian to follow in this session. You have to say it is doing him fairly well so far. 35.1 he's just posted, which is a tenth faster than he managed at any point yesterday. Alonso running well yesterday, but looking at what Vietti can do just there. We just saw Danny Hocado briefly on our screens, and I want to just point out this quite remarkable stat that I have for you. I'm going to be so impressed by this. I was super impressed when I found out as well. David Alonso won 2 races ago in Hungary. Danny Hocado won last time out in Barcelona. 2 rookies winning back-to-back intermediate class races. When was the last time that happened?
I'm going to immediately pass on that one. I couldn't even begin to know where to start.
Quite remarkable. Hasn't happened apparently since the first 2 races of the 1993 250cc season, when Tetsuya Harada won the opening race in Eastern Creek in Australia, and then Nobuatsu Aoki won in Shah Alam next time out in Malaysia, which is a remarkable feat. So what we can see is that it's not too often that we have debut intermediate class victors and winning in back-to-back races, which is quite remarkable.
Could we see 3 in a row from the rookie pairing? Certainly wouldn't rule it out completely at this stage. Perhaps Holgado looks the more likely at this stage than Alonso, but Alonso is taking those steps forward this morning. He said yesterday, or he said on the eve of the weekend, that riding on his own was perhaps the best way to ultimately improve and to get to where he wants to get to in Moto2. Just following riders in practice maybe only get you so far. Ultimately, you are going to have to figure it out for yourself. Certainly Daniel Holgado has done that. He's just gone up into 3rd place now, 3rd and 4th for the Aspar Giro, and I feel they'll be expecting potentially title challenges from each of their riders in 2026.
Yeah, I agree with that. Incidentally, it was just the 5th time since 1993 that we've had 2 different rookies winning races in the intermediate class. We had it in 2007 with Alvaro Bautista and Mickey Kallio, 2 rookies in that season who won races. Then we had it in 2010, Iannone and Stefan Bradl. 2011 with Marc Marquez and Kelly Pirro. And then 3 years ago, Pedro Acosta and Alonso Lopez. So, yeah, shout out to resident statistician, TV Room Raccoon, for some of those stats. Mind-blowing. See that, yeah, first time rookies have won back-to-back races in the intermediate class since 1993.
I've had a stellar rookie class this year in Moto2 with the Aspar Giro, with Colin Vietu, who's started to show recently that he might still stand on the podium before the season is out. Ivan Ortola, we've already seen him on the front row of the grid earlier on in the season. Back in Assen, Adrian Huertas, who right on cue appears on the screen, showed in Hungary at a track where perhaps he was on more of a level playing field with the rest as a newcomer to Moto2, that he can also deliver. Of course, we're fully expecting next season to also be introduced to an impressive crop of rookies. The top 2 in the Moto3 World Championship as it stands expected to move up. One of them already confirmed to move up. Angel Tequeras confirmed yesterday to be moving up with the MSI squad alongside Ivan Ortola next season, but all the smart money is on Jose Antonio Rueda doing the same. Luca Lanetta, we now know, is also going to be moving up to Moto2 next season. He's going to be teammates to Celestino Vietti at the Speed RS team on a Boscoscuro 2. So, as always is the case across our Grand Prix classes, it's a constant state of evolution as riders move up and riders move out to make way for the next generation.
Amazing shot through Cavoni of Manny Gonzalez, getting it so crossed up. Goodness me, that was a huge moment at one of the scariest corners on the entire championship. Well, I would say 70% of that was in control, and then that last bit was just a little bit too close to the edge. You can see there, well over 260 kilometers per hour. It's thick sideways in 6th gear. Well, it will be a trip back to pit lane and a change of underwear for the Spaniard after that. That was quite remarkable.
It's just in the back of the picture after that Code Brown moment at Cavone. I think he's now explaining to the team just what happened. Fortunately, no harm done for Manny Gonzalez, and it goes to show, doesn't it? It's on a moment like that where what feels like a really comfortable World Championship league can very easily be closed right down. I've already seen this season Aaron Canet have key crashes. We've seen him have crashes in practice sessions that have affected his weekend. Of course, had a crash on the Saturday morning in Austria, and he really wasn't the same again in that Grand Prix weekend. So kind of rolled to have a single lap off, really, when you're fighting for a World Championship, as Manu is.
Yeah. You made the very good point yesterday, Lewis, that historically, riders from the VR46 Academy who have ample experience of riding around this Misano World Circuit, Marco Simoncelli, are usually so strong in sector number 3, and that is basically the sector of track that goes from the entry to turn 10, Tremonto, onto the back straight, through Carboni, then through 2 more of those right-handers just before turn number 14. And yesterday, Celestino Vietti was 0.13 seconds faster than anyone else through that sector alone. And when we have, what, 21 riders covered by 1 second, to have that kind of advantage in that part of the track alone is just, something that really makes him stand out. So Vietti in that 3rd sector making the difference yesterday.
It's really easy up your sleeve on any lap of the weekend, particularly when you're going for a qualifying lap. But You think of how that might affect the race tomorrow. One of the big overtaking opportunities is into turn 14, the tight Caro hairpin, 2 corners from the end of the lap. If Vietti's able to pull out 5-6 bike lanes through the right-handers that precede that, and he's not going to be under any kind of threat in those corners, and potentially, if he has to attack anyone into those corners, he's going to get a huge run on them through that part of the lap. So it's an advantage that the rest are going to try and close down. Of course, it is a circuit that is much more than just Carbone, although it's perhaps the most iconic corner around this circuit. 4.2 kilometers of this Misano World Circuit, Marcus Simoncelli, 16 corners, of which Albert Arenas is now into the 15th of them. You can see some of those ripples through the left-hander at 15. It's not a massively bumpy circuit, but there are those sort of gentle ripples through the last couple of corners. And Albert Arenas looking set to lift himself up from 17th in the order. He climbs 12 places now into 5th.
Yeah, that was another comment that many riders were making yesterday. This track surface that was laid down, I can't remember exactly the year, a couple of years ago at least, offers up really, really excellent grip. And yeah, there's no sort of degradation. The tyres can go full race distance at absolutely flat channels. Holding power just makes a bit of a mess of turn 13 just there. However, what did Drew Roberts earlier today, just when I was walking into the paddock, and he was saying it is really bumpy out there. It's not like profound, big, huge bumps that you see, but there's just lots of ripples all the way around the track. And yeah, it can be very, very difficult to kind of keep yourself on the racing line on occasion when you're facing those bumps. We know that this Misano World Circuit is a circuit that is used very, very often for all types of racing, not just the two-wheel kind. And yeah, it does seem as though the ripples around here have got a little bit more pronounced since last year. So that is causing a few challenges for riders, I think, across all the categories.
To say, Neil, another rider once again, just as he was this time last weekend, who's catching the eye is Danny Holgado, who's just got into 2nd place. His last 2 laps have both been 1:35.0s, and he's really caught Alonso. We saw him on screen a moment ago. Alonso's lost 8 tenths to Holgado in the last 2 laps. And the 2 Aspar teammates are now firmly together on the racetrack. So Danny Holgado once again demonstrating on this Saturday morning, which is generally his session where he goes for the race simulation, that he's got the kind of pace which could threaten the front row today and the podium tomorrow. Albert Arenas is now your Saturday morning leader, a 34.9 for Arenas. And that compares to a 35.0 that he did in practice yesterday.
Holgado doing those lap times in what, his 12th lap of the session. So very, very strong rhythm once again from Danny Holgado. I'm going to hold my hands up right now and say I did not expect 15 races into his debut season that Danny Holgado would A, have won a race, and B, be showing the kind of speed to suggest that he'd go on and win more races before the end of the year. I always had him down as a very talented rider who fought for championships in Moto3, but I certainly didn't have him on the level of the likes of David Alonso, maybe even put someone like Colin Bayern ahead of him from what he managed to achieve in the Moto3 category. But Holgado's performances across this season have been so impressive, and you pointed this out yesterday. He's actually jumped up into 7th in the championship, so he's not only just had a few real standout rides that have captured brilliant results like his teammate David Alonso, but he's consistently been there more or less inside the top 10, bar a little drop off mid-season when he was having those issues with arm pump. But since he kind of got back on track just before the summer break in Brno, he has been absolutely awesome. Looks as though he can continue that run here this weekend.
Feels like there's a real maturity about Danny Holgado now, even when you watch him speak to our colleagues in the broadcaster set, which he's having to do a lot nowadays with his recent upturn in form. There seems to be a real calmness, a real maturity. He really has improved his English too over the last year or two. So he's having to get rather accustomed to speaking to the world media, who succeed, the more the media want a piece of you, as they realise that serious big deal in this paddock now, and Danny Holgado is really starting to establish himself as that, extrapolating a long way forward here into this time next year. But we've talked so much in MotoGP about contracts being up at the end of next season, with the regulations reset coming in 2027, which is leading to potentially thoughts of some reshuffling around in the MotoGP paddock. Well, that of course means with contracts up in MotoGP that potentially perhaps more opportunity than there have been previously for some Moto2 riders to move up into that. So certainly going to be a big feature of next season. We are expecting this rookie crop of 2025 to really step up and challenge consistently for race victories, if not the World Championship. 6.5 minutes to go, and this is your new leader. Solo Lopez, winner of this Grand Prix back in 2022. I have to say, I'm racking my brains and I'm struggling to think of the last time we've seen Lopez top a session, but this might be about to end in free practice 2. Certainly continuing to see further evidence that the Boscoscuro is working pretty well around this Misano circuit.
Decent time now from Lopez. They obviously him and that chassis talked yesterday afternoon with the hands of Celestino Vietti as Luca Boscoscuro looks on. Where is Vietti in the session? Down in 13th, rather fittingly. I'm sure the alarm bells won't be ringing. Might be ringing ever so slightly for a rider in 17th. Aaron Canet has not really shown any sign of a step forward in this session. We're getting to this crunch point in the season where I start losing hope that Canet can turn this around, Lewis. I'm being brutally honest.
Feels as if he's going to need some misfortune for Manu Gonzalez and Diogo Moreira, and obviously fortune from his point of view to keep him in the mix. He's just not got the pure pace, has he, at the moment, to sustain a championship challenge. Although, certainly one thing Aaron Canet is not going to do is back away from a challenge or a fight, because he seemed to deliver his best when his back is against the wall. It's starting to get towards that sort of feeling, isn't it? In Moto2, it almost has the feeling now that we're likely to see a two-way fight between Gonzalez and Moreira in the closing stages of this season, because both of those certainly look like they've got race winning potential this weekend, and I think Jay Dixon looks like he's got the same. This could be a new lap record in Moto2. It's not quite, it's 300 shy of what Celestino Vietti did yesterday. You can see the joy there in the Mark VDS box as Dixon takes top spot.
I think that was Sam Lowe's and his young daughter there making an appearance. Sam, obviously Mark VDS's World Superbike rider, offering up some support here this weekend. Tricky weekend for Sam in Magny-Cours just 1 week ago in the World Superbike Championship, but certainly the speed was there, just didn't quite pan out as he would have wished in the 3 races. See Sam consistently up among the top and fastest names. Stupio Albolino puts a bit of a move on Holgado. Holgado just backing out and thinking, you know what, I don't need to get this kind of aggressive in FP2. Trying to rescue his weekend after the difficulties yesterday. We've seen quite a few improvers here coming in towards the end of the session. Difficult to know exactly who is on which tire combination, who is just fitted a soft tire towards the end of the session. It's a bit of a prelude preparation for qualifying coming up this afternoon. But Alex De Angelis on the right of your screen there, 250cc race winner, pretty impressed with that recent lap time there for Tony.
Yeah, because certainly on one half of the Blue Crew Pramac Boscoscuro box, it has been going quite well. Ethan Guevara strong yesterday inside the top 10 in both sessions, and he was particularly pleased that the best lap time he set yesterday was on his own. Didn't need any kind of reference or tow. Here is Guevara on the 28, just ahead of Colin Vyatt. Vyatt's up into 8th place now in this session. Of course, we told you before the session got underway of exactly where his problems were yesterday, and he has made a big step in this morning session. He's a second faster now than he was yesterday. Best of him yesterday was a 36.0. He's down now to a 35.1 and improving on this current lap. Could potentially get himself into the 34s if he ends this lap very well. Not sure whether Guevara up ahead of him has helped with that, and Vyatt does just about fail to improve on a 35.1, but signs of the Vyatt that has qualified and finished in the top 10 in the last 3 Grand Prix now returning to us at Misano.
Yeah, you have to almost think that this is his practice session from yesterday, because he is 1 session behind the rest. It's been a pretty good session from Barry Baltus. We didn't really mention him in our movers and shakers for the potential win tomorrow, but there were a whole host of riders yesterday afternoon doing kind of mid to high 1 minute 35s, and Baltus was very consistent. He was maybe not within a couple of tenths per lap of what Vietti could do, but few were. I think Baltus could be a bit of an outside shot for the podium.
Just watching Vietti, look at that. He came through the third sector. He came from a quarter of a second down on Dixon to now within half a tenth of him. Just again underlining the advantage Vietti's got through the fast right-handers in sector 3. We've currently got a Bosco-Scuro 1-2-3, and I think that's going to become a 1-2-3-4 here as number 13 crosses the line. Chelsea to Vietti. Look at the time he gained in the second half of the lap. With ease, Vietti takes top spot back again.
Just checking, not quite a new lap record for Celestino Vietti, but really knocking on the door. It's just 200ths of a second away from his own new lap record that he set yesterday afternoon. So times very fast here at the end of this Moto2 FP2 session. Gonzalez has dropped down to 15th, but I have to imagine he's just still out there cutting laps. Lost a lot of time in that third sector just there before he started to give up the ghost.
Interesting to see that Gonzalez is down in 15th place and hasn't done anything better than a 35.2 in this session so far. So my questions for him to answer. The championship contenders, we've got Moreira 6th, Gonzalez 15th, and Aaron Canet down in 19th as Tony Arbolino now cuts the line with one more lap to go. He's lapping quite nicely in the 35s.
Look at this from Aaron Canet. We saw this in Hungary where been nowhere all weekend, and he threw in a fast lap right towards the end of FP2, but Vietti is on course to absolutely obliterate his own lap record. He is a quarter of a second up. We've got a yellow flag in sector number 1. Sure exactly what was going on there, but we could see Canet jump up. We could see a new lap record for Vietti here.
Navarro, who has a long lap penalty to serve tomorrow for his crash with Salach last weekend. He's down at turn 2, a 34.624. Vietti did lose a little bit of time in that final sector, but it is still a new all-time lap record, beating his own mark from yesterday.
Brilliant stuff from Vietti, and Canet jumps up the order into 8. It's not quite as spectacular as what we saw from him 2 GPs ago on a Saturday morning. It was very fast to top the FP2 session, but at least there were some late signs of improvement for Aron as Navarro walks away. Shoulders a bit slumped, and here's what happened. And through turn number 2, we lost it way before.
The bike appeared into picture, the rider didn't, unfortunately. That's Jorge Navarro up on his feet. 26th at the end of the session for him. His teammate Alex Scridge from 1 place up ahead in 25th. Personal bests with the exception of Danny Munoz on our timing screens at the moment. So Celestino Vietti is going to top his 2nd session in a row here at the San Marino Grand Prix, and if he wasn't already the favourite for this San Marino Grand Prix weekend, he certainly is now, after that pair of 34.6s at the end of the session. Boy, will Luca Bosco-Scuro be pleased with the morning's events. They lock out the top 4.
Possibly the first top 4 lockout since, what, the race in Austin, perhaps? And we had wet conditions, but Vietti is looking very formidable here on home soil. Say, we'll go away and analyse what happened lap by lap in this session, but just in terms of sheer speed, there was no questioning that Vietti has it within him to take pole position this year. It would be his first pole position of 2025. He's not been a front row hound at all. His qualifying record has been very, very up and down, as it has been pretty much throughout his entire career. But he was under the lap record again here this morning at Misano. 600ths of a second clear of this rider here, Jake Dixon, continuing his fine form. Hasn't been outside the top 4 in any of the 3 sessions so far here this weekend.
Vietti, Dixon, Arbolino, Lopez, the quartet of Bosco-Scuro's right up at the top. Tony Arbolino will be as pumped up in under his crash over there as he is on our graphics, bottom right of your screen there, having, yes, in some ways righted the wrongs of what happened yesterday afternoon. He'd only truly do that, I guess, if he gets through qualifying 1. Problems that were beyond Arbolino's control, in fairness, yesterday, with a technical problem right at the start of the session. Much more likely for him. Under the radar, I think, would be the polite way of describing Manu Gonzalez's morning session. We're still doing 35.6s at the end of practice this morning. That was on the same set of tyres, then it's not as bad as it looks. Perhaps same can't be said for this man, Aaron Canet, who did lift himself up into 8th place at the end of the session, but I'm not sure he's completely answered all the questions we were asking of him when the session began. Diogo Moreira to complete our trio of title chasers. Place for him. He was the last rider in the 34s. He set his best lap quite early in that session, actually, as others improved late on. Moreira, whatever he does in practice, you generally come to expect him to feature on the front 2 rows when it's all on the line. But it is Celestino Vietti who extends his incredible run this weekend. Yesterday afternoon and fastest this morning, a new lap record for Chile. Boscoscuro top 4 with Dixon, Arbolino and Lopez next up. Calex is completing the top 10 with Arenas and Moreira next up from Baltas, Canet, Papante, Colgado and Munoz with Colin Vire 11th, Alonso 12th, Aegis, Ramirez, Guevara and Gonzalez only 16th for the World Championship leader. Huertas 17th from Sasaki, Salach and Zonta van den Gorberg. But Ferrandez, he made progress this morning after his crash yesterday, up into 21st ahead of his fellow wildcard Alberto Sura. So after a fantastic Friday, it's a Super Saturday so far for Celestino Vietti. He remains the man to beat in Moto2. MotoGP.
Close to the beach of Rimini, Riccione and Catola collides in Misano World Circuit. Marco Simoncelli, host venue for the Red Bull Grand Prix of San Marino. Misano is one of 8 races to feature an action-packed 3 months, with MotoGP soon to go globe-trotting to Motegi, Mandalika, Philippon and Sepang. The back of the Q2 place tops the morning agenda ahead of the Tissot sprint later. It's time for MotoGP. So measuring 4.226 miles, just over 2.6 miles in length, 16 corners, 10 right, 6 left, a very short 530-metre start finish straight. Is the Misano World Circuit. Marco Simoncelli, 32nd time we're set to go Grand Prix racing in Italy's Adriatic coast, hard braking that first corner into Sector 1. Very, very tricky break in the turns 9 and 10. We saw Frankie Morbidelli and Juan Mir have crashes there yesterday. Turn 16 also caught out a couple of riders on a dramatic Friday. 1, 8, 9 and 10 are the most demanding braking points here in San Marino. Good morning and welcome to what is a very sunny San Marino. It's the sunshine shining on already packed grandstands. Grassy hillsides are getting pretty busy as well as we get set for our 16th sprint Saturday of 2025. Marc Marquez inching, creeping ever closer to capturing that 7th MotoGP World Championship. It can't be done here this weekend in the Red Bull Grand Prix of San Marino. That was because his brother Alex produced one of the rides of his life. Was just 6 days ago now at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalonia. Alex's 2nd ever MotoGP victory, making it impossible for Marc to clinch the crown here this weekend. But on practice Friday, it was the Ducati Lenovo star that once again made all the front running. Marc led the way on day 1 here in Italy. A 1:30.480, putting him a 10th and a half clear of Marco Bezzecchi, who looked really strong, really fast on the factory Aprilias. Both factory Aprilias getting directly through to Q2 yesterday. Jorge Martin taking advantage of a bit of a toe behind Bez, was 8th quickest. Frankie Morbidelli, who had to miss the first 10 minutes of FP1. There was a crash late on in FP1 as well for the Italian, a session that he did lead, and he was also inside the top 3 at the end of play yesterday. A 1:30.480 though, as mentioned, did put Mark top of the pile ahead of Bezzecchi. Morbidelli, Bagnaia looking back on song, a former winner here of course in Misano. Alex Marquez ran mid despite a late crash at turn 9. Luke Marini strong again on the factory Honda. Martin, Acosta and the Gian Antonio, they are your 10 riders that have already made it safely through to Q2 later on this morning. Just missing out were our 2 French flyers, Zarco and Quattararo. Binder, Vinales, Ralph Fernandez had a real heavy fall late on yesterday at turn 15. He ended the day in 15. P15 did the Trackhouse rider. Bastianini, we didn't see him struggling as much as he did yesterday. The beast only 17th quickest, had a Fermin Aldeguer, the rookie, who's having his struggles as well on the VK Brasilia Racing Ducati. And finally, after all the talk, all the hype, we did for the first time get to see in competitive action the brand new Yamaha V4 powered wide start and one in the hands of test rider Augusto Fernandez. And despite some early teething problems and a crash for Fernandez on Friday, well, some very, very promising signs indeed, as he finished 19th quickest ahead of Rins, Agura, Oliveira and Chantra. So yeah, very positive early signs for the new era that Yamaha are currently embarking on. Matt Burton Lewis still to be in the commentary box. Jack Appleyard down in pit lane getting set to talk you through all of the Sprint Saturday action here in Misano. And for the first time in a long time, Lewis, it feels like there were smiles on both sides of the factory Ducati garage, as Marc Marquez was fastest and Pecco Bagnaia looking much more like his old self in 4th spot.
Revealing, as always, his special helmet for the San Marino Grand Prix. It is something of a BR46 Academy tradition. Just off to the left of picture, you're about to see him now, is the legendary 2007 and 2011 world champion Casey Stoner, of course, with a true chief he knows very, very well, Christian Gabarini. We saw Stoner in the HRC Honda Castrol box yesterday with Christian Pupelin lending some help to Luca Marini. This time he's in the corner of the 2-time world champion.
Yeah, lots of grip on offer around this Misano circuit and track knowledge. You always felt that this was going to be an ideal time for Bagnaia to get his season back on track. With the extra grip, he said he can use more the rear to stop the bike. The rear just sitting down onto the tarmac better rather than having it floating around and then pushing the front, which has been his problem for so much of the season. He has gone back to the shorter stroke Öhlins front forks, less pitching on the front. He hasn't used those since Aragon. That's clearly a benefit as well yesterday. More home round special helmets. So as just mentioned, this is now the tradition started all those years ago by